Bro, I'm not gonna lie to you. You see the first movie, and the first movie is great. And you like, you ready for the second movie? It's not great, man. You don't have to change much. You could do the same thing, but add in like one or two things. Nothing that would break the universe. Um, but they don't do that. They be. I feel like with some of these movies, they be trying to be up to date. They be trying to throw in new stuff from what's happening now. Like maybe the last movie happened like 20 years ago. But then you can't put what happened 20 years ago and try to make it feel like it's funny or interesting because like it was 20 years ago. Like say the movie took place 20 years ago where you could the phone signals was bad and you try to make a another joke about how the phone signals are still bad, which is because like based on the time it's like nah, that won't work. I think people need to know movies are movies. Movies are movies. Movies are movies. Like people don't know that. I think we're ready to get right into it.
It's not what you do, it's how you do it. If we could travel back to 2017 and I sat you down and pitched you a Spider-Man film saying, okay, so it's an origin story about a kid named Miles Morales who becomes Spider-Man, but wait, Peter Parker dies, and then another midlife crisis burnout Peter Parker in sweatpants shows up, oh, and a cartoon pig, and a black and white detective Spider-Man, and a robot anime girl, they're from different universes, and they all team up to fight Kingpin, who built a giant collider to bring back his dead family, which threatens the multiverse, and Miles only figures out his powers and suits up at the climax, near the end of the movie.
If we did a mind map of all the critiques of that idea, I bet all my life savings that the biggest common phrase or complaint would be loaded plot, too much.
Insert forced diversity complaint here. And complaints about it being too much wouldn't have been unfounded. I mean, we're coming off multiple reboots of the live-action films that have been torn apart, in big part because their plots spun out trying to juggle too much all at once. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse releases, the first big screen appearance bringing Miles Morales from comic book to movie. An incredibly experimental film that managed to bring limelight and shine to the next holder of the Spider-Man mantle while serving as a strong love letter to Peter Parker as we grew up with him, seeing him in his prime, and also being greeted by an older, cynical Peter Parker, amalgamated from the films we grew up with, who meets us, the audience, where we're at. This film kneels to welcome a new generation of young Spider-Man fans, and then stands up to acknowledge those of us who were once that child as well. By all means and purposes, Into the Spider-Verse was perfect, and not by embracing the technical standards set by preceding movies, or by trying to recreate the Marvel formula, but by truly taking risks, visually and narratively. This film doesn't shy away from Peter's shadow looming over Miles as a character, it stares that reality down the barrel and directly addresses it. Anyone can wear the mask. Now that we have that established, let's skip forward a bit, where in 2018, reviews have come out, Into the Spider-Verse is a massive hit. Miles Morales is now a household name, and anyone who is ready to complain is busy eating their own doubts.
If I asked you, from a purely critical standpoint,
How about a sequel?
before I could have even mentioned the phrase Spider Society, you would have draped me up by my shirt against the wall, slapped me across my sexy face, put a gun to my head, and told me,
The film ended excellently. There is no need to mess with perfection for the sake of money. If you cash grab too close to the sun, I will shoot you down. Years and delays would pass, and Across the Spider-Verse would release, to equally positive reviews. Say it with me, guys.
it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
But how did they do it? In order to figure that out, let's do what we do best as people who love to make confident claims about the future. Look back. Look back at 5 of the most common mistakes we might have expected them to make. The 5 mistakes we've seen other franchises make time and time again in order to further appreciate this masterpiece in storytelling.
Number 1. Rehashing the original. Instead of evolving the story, some sequels just copy and paste the original beat for beat with minor changes. It feels safe, lazy, and unoriginal.
Across the Spider-Verse doubles down on the risks taken by its first installment by expanding on the world in new ways, and taking its time to give extra layers of depth to previously introduced characters, providing more character motivations and context to Gwen and Miles' parents, Rio and Jeff, by taking its time to flesh out these characters and develop on their feelings, before wowing us with the Spider Society and all the new multiverse terminology. We, as the audience, are able to keep hold of that emotional core of the movie, regardless of how expansive the world building becomes, with the anchor of the original movie being that you need to trust yourself and take leaps, or risks, to get to where you want to be. This new anchor within the movie adds on to this, and in turn helps us see the consistent main theme of the movie. Taking the self-belief and sense of self we built and Into the Spider-Verse with Miles, we present him with a new challenge. It's one thing to weigh that confidence against your own doubts, where the core conflict is man versus self, but when the whole world is doubting you, pressuring you, demanding you either give up or compromise your core beliefs, the main dilemma here isn't about how one should respond to their own insecurities, it's about being resilient, not losing sight of who you are, regardless of how big of an ocean you're thrown into, or how easy it would be to conform, man versus society. By advancing the conflict in the first movie, man versus self-doubts, something we can all relate to, especially when we're new to a field or figuring out our own purpose in life. 2. Man versus societal doubts, the natural next step in self-discovery, contrasting and holding true to yourself with people whose interests oppose your own around you. Spider-Verse is able to avoid rehashing the plot, not by running away from it and trying to make the film about a whole new thing, but by allowing the focus of the story to build on top of the previous focus, something which, if done wrong, could easily come off like a rehashed plot, and thus, I would consider it a pretty risky decision. 2. Ignoring character growth. Characters who learned, grew, or matured in the original suddenly act like they're back at square one, just for plot convenience. Spider-Verse excels here as well. Not only is the character growth from the last movie acknowledged, it's built upon. Miles is older here, more confident, better at swinging. The movie makes a point of letting us know that Miles hasn't forgotten his lesson from the last movie. The main big decision he makes in this film, rebelling against the Spider Society and staying strong in his goal of returning to his dimension, is one he would have never made as decisively or at all in Into the Spider-Verse. In that film, he's overwhelmed and doubted by 5 more experienced Spider people, and that moment is enough to break his spirit and send him home. Here, he's opposed, doubted by hundreds of them. Even his trusted friend and mentor, people who helped him find his confidence in the first place. In some stories, this betrayal or disappointment might have been enough to throw off the average protagonist. But here we see that Miles has internalized what he learned about himself in the first movie to the degree that his confidence and sense of self remains unshaken even when his previous mentor, Peter B., tries to convince him to stop. In the first film, we leave Gwen Stacy as someone who's learning to trust and belong in a friendship again after the death of her friend Peter. She's learned to let her guard down. And again, the movie establishes that this development remains true right from her first appearance, by having her be the first to reach out to Miles and connect with him across universes, even when it goes against her mission. Gwen is actually the one reaching out to Miles throughout the movie, even to the extent that she also tries to shake his will to rebel through doing something she would have been far too unavailable and closed off to do in the first movie. The character growth here isn't being betrayed for the sake of the drama, it's being developed in tandem with the drama, both aspects adding to each other in the writing rather than taking from each other. Peter B. Parker ends off the last film learning to also take risks, trust himself to get out of his own rut and take risks in love and relationships himself. The burnout, depressed cynic we meet in the first film has grown into a loving father in the second. His gray sweatpants are replaced by bright-colored bathrobe and slippers, symbolizing the newfound comfort and security he's allowed himself to find in his wife and daughter. One of the most heartfelt scenes between him and Miles here is him admitting that mentoring Miles inspired him to open up to having a child with MJ in the first place. Funny enough, his character development in this way is also used in an attempt to pull Miles off his path of rebelling as well. Across the Spider-Verse doesn't just passively acknowledge the character development that these 3 have been through, it celebrates and allows these changed people to create new connections, dynamics, and obstacles among each other. Number 3.
trying to go bigger for the sake of it. Sequels often assume bigger equals better. More explosions, more characters, higher stakes. But without real depth, it's all just noise.
With everything I've already mentioned about the film, and your own memory, it should be obvious here that no expansion is pointless in this film. While I know some may have been disappointed that their favorite Spider-Person didn't get as many speaking lines to work with, I think that was for the best. The Spider Society feels like a force of nature on its own, and its inclusion makes sense because it allows us to see how much stronger Miles' will has grown from the last movie. Besides the Society, the movie only really both introduces and fleshes out Miguel O'Hara and the Spot. I'm sure Hobie and Pav will receive similar treatment in the final installment. While the film feels long and massive in memory, I was surprised in my rewatch to see how disciplined the writing is in refusing to get lost in the details. Every background detail, from Hobie building Gwen's new watch, to Pav taking the role of the audience and teasing Miles and Gwen about their chemistry, or Jeff Morales' knowing glares and sassy side comments, serves the narrative instead of taking from it.
4. Forgetting the core appeal. They miss what made the original so special in the first place, whether it was tone, chemistry, world building, or theme, and lose that spark they had to begin with.
Ultimately, among all its other parts, Into the Spider-Verse also originally had us fall in love with its visual beauty, embracing imperfection in its character designs, with Miles' eyes, Gwen's tooth gap, Peter's sweatpants, and Across the Spider-Verse doesn't dare forget its risk-taking roots. The music, the animation, the themes, and emotions are so much more inventive. Take the scene with Gwen's father finding out she's Spider-Woman. The dread of finding out your father might hate your alter ego more than he loves you or trusts you. The grief of feeling that bridge with your single parent burn in moments, and all the feelings in between leak out and splash across the scene, symbolized by the watercolor. Like a painting in the rain, it bleeds all over Gwen's world as the background melts away, and you feel how dominating and world-shifting these emotions are in this moment. The visual experimentation we fell in love with in the first movie is more present than ever. It's almost like the studio's innovation and love for the character matures and grows along with Miles himself, being more and more unafraid to set itself apart and trailblaze the art present confidently, all with the exaggerated swagger of a black.
5. Being tonally inconsistent. Sequels sometimes shift tone too drastically, going from grounded to goofy to lighthearted to grim, jarring the audience.
This isn't an occurrence that should be new to anyone who's more than a little familiar with the MCU. Here, within 2 hours and 20 minutes, Across the Spider-Verse manages to balance being light, heavy, heartfelt, and dark. And I think a good reason for this is that the film allows the comedy to come and go when the story calls for it. It lets emotions linger, allowing us to take things in and breathe within rest beats rather than forcing the narrative to follow a formula that doesn't fit its natural rhythm of feeling. When comedy does happen, it isn't all people making one-liners that break character, it's situational humor that makes sense. When we first meet Miguel, we aren't laughing because he rips up the script, looks at the camera, and comedically references political tensions in the real world. We're laughing because he's incredibly stern, paranoid, and takes himself too seriously, which is a trait that can and does exist when the story is funny or dark, creating for moments of levity with Spider-Gwen and overwhelmingly intimidating and stressful moments with Miles. And this consistency is what allows us to feel like we know characters well with limited screen time, because the story doesn't have to break away from letting us get to know them with jokes that betray their own characterization. I mean, sure, it ended on somewhat of a controversial cliffhanger, but let's be fair. The cliffhanger isn't built on themes that are set up in the last 5 minutes in a last-ditch attempt to force a new installment. It's comprised of themes that are established all the way back when Miles mentions having 2 cakes, and when Rio asks him to take care of the little boy she raised no matter how far from home he is. Across the Spider-Verse isn't just a follow-up, it's a statement, a challenge. It looks at the landscape of modern sequels, filled with safe bets, recycled arcs, and empty spectacle, and it says, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. It builds on what came before without being shackled by it. It respects its roots, but it's not afraid to evolve, to take risks, to leave questions unanswered, and to trust its audience. And somehow, in doing all that, it feels more complete than most stories with a definitive ending, because a great sequel doesn't just continue the story, it enriches it.
But what do I know? I'm just a voice on the internet. What moment from Across the Spider-Verse hits you the hardest? Let me know that in the comments. I am the guy on the bike. That is me.
Okay. Thank y'all for watching. We're gonna get into the next one. It's gonna be probably the last